How did you get into woodworking?
I was a musician for many years, so I used to make things like pedal boards, and then later on I got into music production, so I started building custom-built desks to hold lots of the recording equipment that I had. Some of my early pre-YouTube projects can be seen on my website. There's a section on there called Early Projects, if you fancy a look at that. But since I built the workshop about 1.5 years ago, I'm now making things much more regularly, now that I have a dedicated space for it.
What is your day job?
I work in facilities for a large insurance company. My job is to design and space plan offices all over the UK usually, and occasionally outside of the UK too, and also to manage occupancy, so basically who sits where within the buildings that we occupy. Some of the skills from my day job have been useful in woodworking, for example being able to draw 2D or 3D scale models on design software like AutoCAD and SketchUp.
How much do you get paid for your videos?
Very little. I've worked it out to be on average about £2.50 per hour. Here's the maths behind that. On average I get about 100,000 video views per month, and I earn around £100 or $135 per month from Google for the adverts that they place on my YouTube videos. The only other form of income that I have from doing this is from adverts displayed on my website, and for some reason that is extremely low. Probably on average about 50 pence per month. I have no idea why that is so low. I know very little about websites and how to make them profitable. In terms of how much time I spend on this, I probably spend on average about 40 hours per month. That includes both the time I spend making things and editing, producing and narrating the videos. So if I'm earning £100 per month, dividing that by 40 hours per month, that's £2.50 per hour. Now it's actually even worse than that, because I have to pay tax on those earnings and pay for the tools that I use and pay for maintaining the website, etc. So once you take all that into account, I'm possibly not even making a profit. I hope this doesn't come across as a rant. It's not meant to be one. Woodwork and upcycling is a hobby for me, and I'd be doing it regardless of whether I'm being paid to do it or not, because I enjoy it. Making the videos is something that I enjoy a lot less than the woodwork, but I do it because I like sharing my projects with people that are interested, and I hope that I can inspire people to be creative and to make use of materials that would otherwise be thrown away. Also, I hope that over time this channel will grow and it does become profitable, but I don't ever expect to earn enough to quit my day job and do this full time as much as I would love to. If you'd like to help support the channel, then sharing the videos on social media, subscribing and clicking like is always helpful, and if you want to donate some money, you can also do that via a donate link on my website.
How is the loft conversion working?
Well, I wouldn't call it a conversion, but I guess you're referring to the boarding the loft video I put up last year. For those of you that haven't seen that video, I used pallets to create a raised floor in my loft, and yes, it's working out very well. I use it for storage, so I don't go up there very often, but I live in a small house, so it's really useful to have that extra storage space.
Do you like the Redwall series of books written by Brian Jacques?
I'm not familiar with them and I don't tend to read much. The only books that I read tend to be about Kate Bush, Bob Dylan or concrete buildings. Dylan has come to say hello. Hello.
Where do you live?
I live in Norwich, which is in the east of England.
How long did it take you to gain the experience and techniques that you have? Were you self-taught or did you learn through landing a job in that field?
I've only really been making things regularly and more seriously in the past 2 or 3 years. I'm entirely self-taught, but I've learned a lot of what I know through watching some of my favourite woodworkers on YouTube.
How do you feel about Brexit?
YouTube is probably the worst place imaginable to start a political debate, so despite my strong feelings on the matter, I think I'm going to avoid answering this one.
What is your workshop like during the winter?
It is cold, but I've only experienced one winter in it so far, and since then I've insulated maybe 60 to 70% of the walls with a mixture of polystyrene sheets and some Celotex offcuts. Basically whatever I could salvage for free. I'm not sure if that will make a huge difference or not this coming winter. I do have a small fan heater that I used a few times last winter, which helps to take the edge off the chill.
If you could, would you choose to be a full-time YouTuber?
Yes, I would love to. It'd be a dream to have more time to spend on projects and making videos more frequently, but unfortunately I don't think it would ever pay the bills.
What was your first woodworking project and what tools did you own at the time?
I honestly can't remember what the first project would have been, but it definitely would have involved a handsaw and a cordless drill.
What do you enjoy more, the process of making a project or the feeling you get when it's finished?
Great question. I'm not really sure which of those two I enjoy the most. It probably depends on the project. For example, boarding the loft or building the workshop, definitely enjoyed the feeling I got when they were finished. But then making the ukulele or the guitar, I probably enjoyed the process of making it more than the feeling I got when it was finished.
What is your favourite YouTube woodworking channel?
I've got loads of favourites, but if I had to pick just one, it would probably be Jimmy DeResta. I love a lot of the things that he makes. I love that he sees the value in what other people would consider junk. I think he's an inspiration to other people getting started making things, and he comes across as a really great, approachable guy. I've got a long list of my favourite other YouTube woodworkers on the links page of my website. Do check them out if you haven't seen them already, because I wouldn't be making videos if it wasn't for people like Jimmy, Paul Sellers, John Heiss, Matthias Wandel, Frank Howarth, John Peters, Jay Bates, Tim Sway. I could go on and on.
Do you have any recommendations for woodworkers outside of the USA where wood prices are higher and workshops are smaller?
Yes, but only if you don't want clean, pristine pieces of wood. Try reclamation yards. The DIY materials section on Gumtree is always worth a look. Searching locally in eBay also often comes up with some good stuff. A lot of the stuff I get comes from alleyways, things left near communal bins, and sometimes in skips and building sites, but I always ask permission before I take anything. I don't tend to buy new wood very often, so I can't really offer any recommendations for that.
What is your favourite wood to work with and why?
Pretty much anything that isn't pine or spruce. For years it feels like that's all I've ever had to work with because it's the most common thing to come by around here. But recently I've had a bit more luck getting my hands on some other types of wood, and I've had a few pieces donated by people, such as the big slab of oak that I used to make the electric guitar body. I haven't experienced working with a really wide variety of woods, but I do really like working with sapele, and I love the way it looks with the stripy ribbons of grain that kind of shimmer in the light.
Why do you finish most projects with boiled linseed oil? Have you considered other finishes?
Because it's cheap, easy to apply, and it makes grain pop really nicely. I do use other finishes like Danish oil when I need a harder wearing finish. For example, I use that on my dining table. I also love brie wax, and I use that quite a lot. I'm never without both a tin of the clear and a tin of the rustic pine colour. I've got some mineral oil as well, which I used on the chopping board as that's food safe, and a teak oil, which I'm yet to use. And I've also got a few tins of varnish.
What other YouTube channels do you watch?
Aside from the woodworking channels that I've already mentioned, I enjoy a lot of photography channels, particularly Tony and Chelsea Northrop's and Matthew Gaskett, and some technology channels like Techmoan and Marcus Brownlee. I also like Tom Scott's channel, which is difficult to put into a category, and of course the Beelips YouTube channel, which is the band that kindly donates the music that is featured in all of my videos. They have some really creative and quite brilliant music videos, most of which were shot on a mobile phone, I believe. I'll link to all of those channels in the description box below if you want to check any of them out. And if you want to recommend me some other YouTube channels that you think I might like, please do.
What's a car boot sale?
So this refers to the air nailer that I said I picked up for £6 at a car boot sale. It's basically similar to a garage sale, or as you'd say in America, a garage sale. People basically put all their junk that they want to get rid of into their car or van, and then they go and park in a big field, and a bunch of other people like me will go and buy stuff from them.
Do you have any trouble with noise complaints?
I've not had any trouble so far, but I try to be as considerate as possible. I wouldn't use any really loud power tools beyond 8 or 9 PM, and I don't tend to play guitar much anymore. If I do, I'll plug some headphones in.
Will you ever get a lathe?
I would love to get a lathe, but unfortunately my workshop is really too small and I really don't have the space for one.
Would you ever get into metalworking and welding?
I would love to get into that too, but again, I don't have the space right now.
Can you review the table saw you use?
So this is the DeWalt DW745. It's a good quality contractor's saw and I've found it to cut well and accurately. I love the rack and pinion fence system, but the table saw is pretty loud. I won't go into too much more detail as I don't want to bore people on this particular video, but I do have a page on my website where I give opinions on all of my tools.
What do you film on?
I use a Panasonic HC-V210. It's a camcorder I bought secondhand for about £80. I do have better cameras, but I don't like using them in the workshop because I worry about them getting knocked about and getting covered in sawdust.
Any problems or design changes, modifications made to your workshop?
Not really any problems other than it being quite small and limiting what tools I can buy. Modifications, I'm gradually insulating and plasterboarding the walls, bit by bit, as and when I find insulation materials.
I believe you use drywall screws in a lot of your projects. Can you explain why?
Yes, I do use drywall screws predominantly, mainly because I buy them in bulk, in boxes of 1,000, and they drive in easily, and I've never had any issues with them in terms of how strong they are. I'm sure that there are other types of screws that are much stronger than drywall screws, but they work well for me and I've never had any issues.
If you were going to build your shed again, what would you do differently?
There are definitely a few things I would do differently. Firstly, for the floor bearers underneath the workshop, I used untreated 2x2s, and I did apply a stain and a wood preserver treatment to them to protect them from rot and insects. But in hindsight, I wish I had have used some proper treated 3x2s because I think they would have lasted longer. I haven't had any issues with the floor as yet. It still feels pretty solid, but I think if I'd have used proper treated 3x2s, the bearers would probably last a lot longer and I wouldn't have to worry about replacing them at some point. Secondly, for the workshop door, I think I should have placed this horizontal piece a little bit higher up, nearer to the top of the door, because you can see here that some of the pieces have bowed slightly, and when the door shuts, you can kind of almost see in. So I'll need to repair this at some point. I think if I run another horizontal piece near the top, I should be able to pull these pieces of wood back together. And the same applies to the piece near the bottom. That's not really caused too much of a problem so far, but I think I'm going to add another piece just along the bottom just to reinforce the door.